everybody, today we are going to be talking about One Day in December by Josie Silver. When I was thinking about how I was going to do this book review, I realized that there's really no way I can do it if I don't spoil at least some parts of the book. So, for the first time, I'm going to be doing a spoiler review. I usually avoid doing these because I myself do not like being spoiled about anything of books when I'm reading them. So, for example, like, I'll usually not even read this passage on the back of the book because to me that's too much spoilers. Or I'll just read like a sentence or two and then stop reading. So I decided that I would just warn you that I am going to be doing spoiler reviews. So if you want to read this book right here, it's like a romance book, then you should wait to watch this video until after you have read it, because there's a few important plot points that I'm going to be ruining for you if you haven't read it yet. So if you don't care about that kind of stuff, you like to hear everybody's opinions beforehand and you'll still read it and everything, then great. But here's your final warning. This is a spoiler review. Okay, we start out with this character here, Lori, going on a bus, and she is just minding her own business when the bus stops at a stop, and she looks up and she sees a man, this guy, just sitting and reading. And she stops and kind of stares for a minute, and eventually he looks up and they make eye contact, and there's this moment between them, like a love at first sight moment pretty much. So they're both thinking that they should probably do something, and so Lori decides she better get off this bus, and then at the same time Jack decides I better get on this bus. And so Lori, she's like frozen in time, can't move, and Jack actually gets up and starts to move towards the bus, but then the bus starts to leave, and so they just kind of watch each other and are just kind of like, and see ya. And so this moment is the defining moment of everything that comes after it. So in this story we have 10 years that goes by. So that's the first year. I think it's 2008 that it starts, and it goes pretty quickly at the beginning. A couple of years pass pretty quick, so like almost the whole year passes. She sets New Year's resolutions every time that a year passes, and her New Year's resolution is to find busboy and try to figure out who it is. And so her friend Sarah, who she's rooming with, they are trying to figure out how they can find this busboy, and they just have not been successful. So time goes by, and we find out that Sarah has a boyfriend, and she's finally going to be able to bring him to this Christmas party that they're having at their apartment, and Lori's going to be able to finally meet this boyfriend. And Sarah's going on about how amazing this guy is, and how he doesn't know it yet, but we're going to get married, and I'll just make him think that it's his idea, but it's gonna happen. And like, so she's really happy, and Lori's like, great. And she still hasn't been able to get in a relationship because she's still kind of holding out to be able to find busboy. And so she, guess what, meets Sarah's boyfriend, and guess what, it's the busboy. And Sarah somehow doesn't see the resemblance between all the descriptions that Lori has told her about what the busboy looks like. And so now we're in this sticky situation where her best friend is dating her love of her life, her love at first sight person that she was dying to meet. And so this is a major problem throughout the rest of the book, obviously. So just from what I've just told you, that's not really a spoiler, because it actually says that on the back of the book, which I did not read. So when I was reading it, that came to a surprise for me. But I guess it's not that big of a spoiler since it happens in the first like 30 or 40 pages of the book. So here we are now with this dilemma. This story is written back and forth perspectives. Lori and Jack goes back and forth. And so most of the time it is Lori. So she's like our main character. And then Jack is our second character. So, and then of course, Sarah is also a very important character too. So they go along. It's been like a year now that Sarah's been dating, and Lori decides not to tell her that it's busboy, which I find interesting that didn't come up more often in the book, like Sarah being like, are you still looking for busboy? What's up with that? Like, she never asks about busboy again for like 6 more years before she asks about busboy again, which is really weird because that was like the only goal that Laurie had for a whole year straight. And then all of a sudden she stops like really talking about finding busboy anymore, and Sarah just doesn't even find that odd or questions her about finding that man anymore. I don't know. It's like maybe 2010 now, maybe 2011. Only a couple years have passed of Laurie and Jack being friends now. They've been trying to avoid each other as much as possible, but then Sarah was like, is there something wrong? Do you not like each other? And so they were like, no, we like, it's just because we're busy. So eventually they did have to spend time with each other. And Laurie just kept trying to push away any feelings and tell herself, oh, he probably doesn't even remember that it was me anyway. He probably let's hope he doesn't remember so that this won't be awkward. I'm never going to mention it. And that was that. So she's tried very hard to just be friends only and put any other feelings away, trying to be a good friend. And so she doesn't want to ruin things with Sarah, of course. So there's a part of the story in Laurie's perspective where it is June and it is her birthday, and Sarah surprises her to take her to this huge like celebration that is all people dressed up with like Grease costumes. So it's like a theme event kind of a thing, and Laurie's like, this is amazing. So they have a good time, and at one point they're on like a double date. Laurie's going with some other guy, and he is like a pretty decent dancer, and Sarah loves to dance, and there's this dance competition, so they get together to do the dance thing, and that just leaves Jack and Laurie to watch. And there's this Ferris wheel that Laurie really wants to go on, and so she's like, please, I hope this like competition doesn't take too long, because I don't want to run out of time to go on that. And so Jack's like, why don't I just take you? They're really invested in this, and they're probably going to be in it for the long haul, so let's just go and get a ride real quick while they're doing this. And so they go on the Ferris wheel together, and that seems like kind of a romantic thing, like seeing the stars at the top of the Ferris wheel with like one other person, and she's with Jack instead of the person she came with. Like it just seems like a little like a weird thing kind of to offer, to be like, let's go do this together. But they do, and so while they're up there, like things are kind of turning to be kind of like romantic. Like it kind of seems like there's a vibe and like something's gonna happen. But then Laura gets a text that her dad's in the hospital because he had a heart attack, and that turns her best day ever to her worst day ever. And so that kind of kills any kind of vibe that she had while she was stuck on that Ferris wheel. I should have mentioned earlier, Jack, when we go to his perspective, we find out that he does remember her from the bus, and he is making the best of the situation too, pretending like he didn't know and all that stuff as well. So they're both just trying to like pretend that they didn't know each other already, which they technically didn't. But so anyways, a few months pass by, we're back into December. So Laurie's out like doing some Christmas shopping, and she turns a corner and runs into Jack. He happens to be trying to find Sarah something as well and wants it to be really special. And Laurie decides to go along with him and help because they're best friends. So she knows everything about Sarah. So she goes, she helps him try to find something, and they go to get drinks afterwards after they find the perfect gift for her. And she drinks a little bit too much and gets a little tipsy and emotional, and she starts to share things that she shouldn't be sharing. One of which she says, do you remember when we first met? And Jack's like, yeah, at the Christmas party when Sarah introduced us. And she's like, no, the first time that we met. And he's like, oh no, please don't say it. And she's like, at the bus stop, do you remember that? And Jack decides to lie and says, no, I don't remember that. And so then she's like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have said anything, I feel stupid, and like all emotional. And so she gets up, like, actually I think she gets so emotional that he like goes around and like kind of cuddles her a little bit to be like, it's okay. And then she looks up and they're really close, and he's like, no, we can't do that. And she's like, oh, and then she's really embarrassed, and then she goes out, and it's snowing outside. And so then he chases after her, and he's like, no, like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you feel bad. And he goes into this like thing that he should not have said. He was like saying how, oh, anyone would be like, of course, it's not that I wouldn't want to kiss you. Like, you'd have to be an idiot to not want to kiss you. You're amazing. And then to prove his point that he's not an idiot, he kisses her and therefore cheats on Sarah with her best friend. And then Laura cheats on her best friend. Like, she like lets him kiss her, and it's not just like an innocent kiss, okay? It is like an intimate kiss in the snow, really long and passionate like, and then they break off and he says, this never happened, never happened. Do not remember this moment. Like, put it behind you, shouldn't have happened. Like, don't tell anybody, especially not Sarah. Just don't even say it to anybody. Like, just, this never happened, okay? It shouldn't have happened. And I know from slightly personal experience that when somebody says, don't tell anyone, this never should have happened, that's just asking for trouble, because eventually somebody's gonna find out what this something that never happened actually happened. And so they keep the secret. Lori feels bad because she's keeping the secret from her best friend, and they kind of try to distance themselves from each other for a while, and it works for a while. And luckily, though close, there were close times where things like that almost happened with them, but never did. That was the only time while Sarah was with Jack. So I'm gonna skip a couple of things here, but fast forwarding on, Lori goes away on vacation. She goes to Thailand, and lo and behold, there happens to be someone from London, which is where she's from, also there that she runs into, and they hit it off, and they sleep together, and they have like a really great last few weeks of their vacation, and then they have to go back to the real world. And since they both live in the same place, they just kept seeing each other, and so they started dating, and they get introduced finally to Jack and Sarah, and Jack is a freaking jerk. Like, obviously jealous, obviously, because he right away like starts judging him, like, oh, he took us to this private bar, like members only bar thing, he's a banker. Like, everything he found out about him was like, oh my gosh, this person is so posh and so like, ugh, like, I can't believe Lori fell for this person. And he just was making all these little short, like, these little comments that were obviously so rude on meeting someone for the first time, and like so obviously against this person that Lori is with. And so Lori calls him out and's like, what the heck's wrong with you? Like, you are being so rude. And he, instead of like immediately apologizing, he like says some little thing to her that's like, you know, like to throw back in her face, like, oh, well, I just didn't expect you to be with someone like him, or like something stupid like that. And she's like, are you kidding? And then he eventually is like, okay, I'm sorry, I'll try to be better. But he like still is really stupid about it, and never really actually tries to get much better, like in relationship status with like Oscar. Like, they never really click. They just kind of have to pretend. And Jack, again, he's terrible at pretending. Like, he still says things that he should keep to himself. So at this point, I'm like really losing interest in Jack as this love interest for Lori. I'm like, do you really want to be like loving this guy who's like this, who can't just be happy with who he's with? And then the second that you get with that Lori like gets with somebody else, he's all of a sudden like protective and jealous of it. And it's like, no, that's not how this works. If you wanted to be with her, you break up with Sarah and you be with her, instead of just being like keeping her close by, like, oh, she's single, I can have her, you know, maybe after this thing with Sarah fizzles out. Like, that's what it feels like, and it's stupid. So anyways, more things happen. Oscar actually ends up proposing to Lori, and so they get married, and so she's completely off the table now. But one thing to note is that Sarah and Jack, they, on that same party where Oscar proposed, they ended up breaking it off because they just were being distant. They felt like things weren't really working out. Something had happened to Jack where he had gotten in an accident and had lost his hearing in one ear, and that was really not helpful for his career of being a radio host. And So he was really bitter about it, and anytime Sarah tried to help him or make him feel better, he was just flat out rude to her. Just did not want to accept any help. Like, felt like he just wanted to be all angry to himself and not let anyone help him. And it was just, that was really annoying, because then Sarah asked Lori to go help him out and see if maybe she could get through to him. And Lori was kind of like, I don't know if I should, but she did. And while she was there, Jack again was being a jerk to her. So much to the point where when she was like, you know what, fine, I'll leave, she gets up to leave and he says more stupid things to her, and then grabs the necklace that Oscar gave her that's on her like chest, grabs it, pulls it, and yanks it off and like breaks it, and it falls on the floor. And I'm like, how immature are you right now? You're being so stupid. And so Lori just was like super shocked at this and just picks up the necklace and leaves. And like they don't talk to each other for a while after that. And he eventually moves to get a job opportunity in like Scotland. So he's a ways away now. So they are all kind of distanced from each other. So right before the wedding, Sarah comes over to Lori's and they're talking, and she's like, well, did you ever end up finding Busboy? And Lori's like, it doesn't matter anymore. I'm with Oscar. I'm happy. Like, who cares? And she's like, you did find him, didn't you then? Tell me. And Lori's like, okay, yes, I did find him. She's like, who was it? And she didn't want to say anything. She was just like, trying to like change the subject. And Sarah's like, it was Jack, isn't it? It's Jack. And so then Laurie's finally like, yes, it was Jack. And Sarah gets so mad at her. She's like, why would you keep, it's been 8 years and you kept the secret from me for 8 whole years. Like, what, were you guys just like laughing behind my back, like being together and all happy while I was just like not knowing any of this? And Laurie's like, no, of course not. And Sarah's like, tell me nothing ever happened between you then. And she finally comes up to confessing about that kiss, and Sarah's like, oh my gosh, and she leaves, and she doesn't even go to Lori's wedding. Her best friend, she was the maid of honor, didn't even go to the wedding because of this. And so like, that's a really sucky situation, but that's what happens when you keep that kind of a secret that was never supposed to happen. Trying to keep something like that a secret doesn't work out, never works. Okay, like a year or so passes by, like about a year I think passes by, and Jack was trying to be with another person, but it wasn't really working out, and so he broke that off, so he's single. And then Oscar gets this opportunity to stay in Brussels, I believe. He's been going there 3 days a week already for his job, and it's been really taxing on their marriage for their first year of marriage. And Laurie's been really hoping that they can finally transfer him back and he can stay in London. And unfortunately, he gets a promotion, but it requires him full-time there. So they're going to have to move. And Laurie does not want to move. She's so adamant. She doesn't want to leave her job. She doesn't want to uproot and be away from her mom and everything like that. And so it ends up breaking up their marriage. She ends up getting a divorce because she's like, I don't want to move. Which seems a little bit silly. Like, if you love someone, you'll go wherever they go. But later on, when Sarah patches things up with Laurie, Sarah does say, it's not the place that matters, it's the person that matters. So like, if Oscar was really her person, it wouldn't matter where they were. And so it just further makes Laurie realize that she wants to be with Jack, like she always has. And so she, at the end of the book, ends up calling in and pretending that she's somebody else and says like a little advice thing for like Jack's radio he's hosting, and he does this little advice call-in thing, and the person, Laurie, decides to call in, and she pretends she's someone else and says, I saw this person at a bus stop years ago and I didn't take my advantage of the situation then, and I'm wondering if he's still holding out. He probably doesn't feel this way anymore. And he's like, oh, well, did you ask him? Because I bet he still does. And they make it so obvious to the people listening that like he's the busboy and that they're supposed to be together, and it becomes this huge like crazy thing, and people on TV are talking about it, and Twitter and all this stuff. And so she's like, I'm gonna have to go down and I'm gonna have to go meet him and stuff. And so she goes and she gets on a train and goes all the way to Scotland and like surprises him and yeah. And so like they end up together finally after 10 years. And so it's like, if that wasn't obvious that they were gonna end up with each other, I mean, immediately from knowing from day one that they ended up seeing each other, finding out that they were going to be in each other's lives, like, you just knew. You just knew Jack and Sarah are going to break up. Oh, Lori's married to Oscar now. They're going to get divorced. Like, it was just, you just knew. It's just that kind of a story. So I was like, there's certain things in this story that I did like. But a lot of it, I was just, like, just the behavior of Jack. He just bugged the crap out of me, that I really didn't care about him getting together with Lori. Like, if they never got together, I would have been like, that's fine, because Jack was a jerk to her and didn't respect her decisions in trying to move on with other people, and just did not treat her great, and then didn't treat Sarah great when all Sarah was trying to do was be good to him and, like, help him out when he was in that accident. Ooh, just makes me mad. And I guess he kind of started redeeming himself near the end, and he started getting a lot nicer and better and less immature, and it was kind of cute how they, like, did the whole radio thing at the end and got together, kind of like that's where the book ends. So who's to say that they got married and lived happily ever after? But I mean, they probably did, right? So anyway, I think that this book was middle ground, I guess, for me. Like, I didn't love it, I didn't hate it. There were certain parts that bugged the crap out of me. There were other parts that I didn't mind, that I thought were cute or funny or nice, but all those things weren't enough to make me forget about the fact about how stupid Jack was for a lot of it, and how rude he was. But yeah, so that is the story of One Day in December, a love story of two people trying to find each other after love at first sight, finding each other and going through all these obstacles, if you could call them that, until they finally get with each other like it was meant to be. So I just wanted to read it because it was a winter story. I started reading part of it in December and then finished it in January, so I could have my little, like, wintry romance in for the year. If you think that still sounds interesting to you, and there's a lot of other things that I left out of it that will still make it worth reading if you want to read it and don't mind that I just spoiled so much of it. If you want to write in the comments about any of your feelings, if you agree or disagree with what I'm saying, since this is a spoiler review, you can put your own spoiler comments in the comments, and that's fine because I've already said everything anyway. So yeah, thank you for watching this spoiler review, and I really appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.